Yo, what's going on YouTube? It's Cupid back for the first time in quite some time with, well, a video for you all. This is the Cupid League Season 3 Draft Recap. And you're probably wondering, oh dang, Cupid League still exists? It's been so long. Well, yeah, sorry about that. I was just too lazy to go ahead and go through the process of making the doc and all of that good stuff. That being said, we have since then done the doc. We've made it, and now we have 16. Yes, this is the biggest Cupid League yet. Teams that drafted, and we have quite a few new players, and hopefully, we can get some interesting storylines involving them. So let's not delay too much. I have 16 teams to cover, and that's quite a lot of teams, so I'm going to go ahead and get into the draft recap and give maybe a little bit of advice or something along those lines for each player. So, first things first, we have the first pick of the draft with Reavg. Reavg starts by picking Mimikyu. There's also Tyranitar, Kartana, Walrein, Tauros, Torterra, Entei, Toucannon, Primarina, Mega Sharpedo, Type Null, and Decidueye. Now, the first thing I immediately notice is the lack of a Pokemon that survives the move Freeze Dry. Freeze Dry is very, very good, and at that point, if your opponent has Freeze Dry, you have this Entei that you need to bring, and also keep healthy. Also, let's see here. Is there a fairy on this team? Yes, there is Primarina. Is there a dragon on this team? No. So now, here's the thing. In drafting, you want to have what's known as an FDS core, a Fairy Dragon Steel core. So, with no dragon on this team, at least that I am noticing, I could be stupid, who knows. With no dragon on this team, you're missing a very, very vital part of your offense, as dragons usually have an excessively good move pool as far as offense is concerned. That being said, you do have solid offense between the Kartana and the Tyranitar and the Entei. In fact, your physical attack is pretty excessive at this point. And for the special attacking side of things, you have a Primarina, which is not bad in its own right. That being said, your speed seems a little bit unreliable. Your fastest Pokemon at the moment, and I could be wrong about this, but I think it's Kartana, which isn't exactly super fast. Kartana is quick, but it's not, what I would like to refer to as a fast Pokemon. You also have the Mega Sharpedo with the speed boost. However, that's unreliable if you're going to rely on calling that speed. I think Tauros might be base 105 speed. It might be faster than Kartana now that I think about it, but that's still not exactly fast. You want to have a base of 120 or higher when you're looking for speed. Beyond that, you have, a good stealth rocker. You have your Tyranitar, you have Torterra as a backup rocker. And as far as defog is concerned, I think Type Null gets defogged. Decidueye also definitely does. So you're going to probably be relying on those two Pokemon more than you would like to. If I had to give this draft a score out of 10, well, I want to point out grass type, grass type, grass type. I want to point out water type, water type. I want to also point out the fact that you've doubled up on fairies. And you also, I don't think you have a rock resist at all, aside from Kartana, which that can be very, very scary. You want to have, at least 2 resistances for every single type. And yeah, I am gonna be also honest and say the triple water type is not what you're going to be wanting to look for. You may want to make some changes towards that, and you don't want the triple grass type either, especially considering, they are very common types and easily countered. So if I had to give this draft a score out of 10, I mean, there are a few Pokemon that I can just never see showing up to a battle. Like, why would you ever bring Walrein when you have Primarina or Mega Sharpedo? Like, sure, Walrein can give you bulk, but you have, just a bulkier Pokemon in type Null. And not only that, type Null does not double up on your weaknesses to, electric or anything like that. So I'm gonna probably start by giving this one a 5 out of 10. I mean, this is Ryuji's first draft. A 5 is a completely acceptable score considering, last season I think I gave someone like a 3 or a 2. So 5 is pretty solid. You are going to be relying on, heavy-duty boots to not get destroyed by Stealth Rocks, because Stealth Rocks is very prevalent, especially in the singles format like this. You have 6 extra points left over. What I would recommend is you'd probably want to do something along the lines of dropping Primarina, because I think Latias and Latios are both available. I could be wrong. We will find out as I go through the recap if that is true or not. And pick up one of those. It would give you a dragon as well as a reliable defogger to, really round out your team very strongly. Next up, we have the Season 2 champion, Plasma, making a return. Plasma this time decides to go with a more balanced offense type of situation. We have Landorus T, we have Clefable, we have Scizor, we're looking like an OU team already. We got Iron Moth in there. I don't really know how I feel about Iron Moth. Slowking, Zoroark Hisui, Lilligant Hisui, Ice-Q, and Mega Ampharos. Now, we have, Stealth Rock, which is very good. We have Defog, which is very, very good. And we also have, our pivoting combination between Scizor with U-Turn and Slowking with Teleport. That's also quite solid. That being said, this team isn't actually super bulky, and I think your fastest Pokemon is, again, not exactly super fast. I am not entirely sure about Zoroark Hisui's base speed stat, but I don't think it's that high, really. Also, I'm not entirely sure about Lilligant Hisui. I don't know the new Pokemon yet. That being said, I think you might struggle in the speed category just a little bit. And Stealth Rocks is, it's not exactly a problem. Now the main things I want to point out are, Ice-Q, bad Pokemon, obviously, but come on, it's there as a meme, clearly, right? Beyond that, I mean, there's not really a ground resist here. Lilligant, from what I understand, at least from its appearance, is a very fragile Pokemon, so you can't really come in on ground-type moves, a Excadrill using Earthquake, for example. You can't really come in on that safely. And then in addition to that, you have the Landorus T as an immunity, which is, obvious, right? But beyond that, I'm not sure how you're really handling Earthquakes. I guess, Ice-Q take the hit, but, we can always play around that. That being said, Knockoff could be quite problematic for your team. Knockoff is a very good move, and you really only have the Mega Ampharos to come in on it. Clefable doesn't like losing its item. And, Landorus T, sure, it'll take it, but you end up losing your Scarf or your Rocky Helmet or your, whatever you decide to put on your Landorus T. And it's not exactly the greatest. And Knockoff into the Iron Moth is disastrous, because you lose those boots, that thing just dies. It's just dead. It's just a dead Pokemon, right? That being said, I do like the type coverage here. We do have the Fairy, the Steel, and technically Mega Ampharos could be considered a Dragon, due to the fact that it is Electric Dragon type. But before Mega Evolution, it is not a Dragon type, and that's very important to note. How do I feel about this team? I don't know. I don't really like teams that are weak to ground, and this team isn't exactly strong against it. You have, like I said, a half resistance and an immunity, which is very, very good, but now you're playing around, okay, Landorus T needs to survive, and Landorus T doesn't have recovery. So, any chip on Landorus is going to add up in the long run, especially when your opponent is holding something in the back, like a late game, you know, Tyranitar or something with Stab Earthquake or anything along those lines. If I have to give this draft a score, it'd probably be about a 7, I want to say. I like your hazard game. I like, you know, the type coverage. You have, you know, the flying. You have every core that you're really looking for, except for, you know, you have water, fire, and then there is no grass type. Oh wait, no, never mind. I lied. Lilligant. I don't really like Lilligant though. I feel like Lilligant Hisui plays more like a fighting type than a grass type. And the reasoning behind that is because, well, it's a physical attacker. And, you know, I really can't, like, Kartana doesn't really fit the niche of, you know, oh yes, I can't imagine any good grass type physical attackers, but that's because Kartana is more of a, it's an anomaly. It's an exception to the rule rather than an example. You know what I'm saying? That being said, yeah, I don't know. I liked your draft last season a little bit more. The bulk on this team is good, but I don't feel like it's very reliable, especially when your opponent knows what to expect and can prepare with calculations and stuff like that. And again, the ground weakness I am not a fan of. That being said, we will move on to the next team. I don't want to dwell too much on every team. Next up, we've got Otto. Otto has gone and drafted Sandstorm with ground type rock, ground, and you know, now we have this problem immediately, and this problem is pretty simple. What are you gonna do about water types? Well, Cradily can get Storm Drain, I believe. I could be wrong about that, but I think it gets Storm Drain. And that's very, very good. That being said, you have Como in the back also, but like, you are very leaned into Sandstorm as your entire plan. Now, I have expressed this one before in former draft leagues. You don't entirely want to rely on a single weather. You know, if you bring more than one weather, it could be very funny. However, it's going to be very, very inconsistent, especially when, you know, your opponent can just bring whatever weather you don't have and bamboozle you. And on top of that, I really, really think you should consider the move Freeze Dry, or even just Ice Beam against your team. Weak to Ice, ×4. Weak to Ice. Weak to Ice, takes neutral damage from Ice. Weak to Ice. Weak to Ice, takes neutral damage from Ice. Weak to Ice. This is your only Ice resistance. Neutral with Ice. Neutral with Ice, and neutral with Ice. So, despite the fact that you are playing Sandstorm, which is usually a team that relies on, you know, very good rock setters and steel types, you still have managed to have a 5-to-1 weakness to resistance ratio of ice types. And I really suggest picking up maybe a fire type, or even, you know, a steel type that isn't part ground, that is not also Earthworm, because let's be honest, like, sure, Earthworm's a good Pokemon, but like, you're so single-filed into the Sandstorm team that you're probably just not gonna have any success with it. You know, your opponent's going to know that it's coming, and they are going to just play around it. If I had to give this one a score, it'd probably be about the same as Ryevji's, to be honest. It's like, sure, you have solid Pokemon, you know, you have a dragon, very cool. You have also your steel types, and you have technically a fairy in Carbink. I'm gonna be honest. You also have Darkspun. Darkspun's more reliable as a fairy, but you know, I'm gonna be honest. Carbink, you're never bringing this Pokemon. Why is it on your team? That's what I'm saying. And like, wait, hold on. Am I seeing that correctly? There is no water type, and there is also no fire type. Am I correct in that assessment? Because those are some very... Behind Fairy Dragon Steel, the second most important core, I would say, is Fire, Water, Grass. Now, you can live without one of them, but I don't think you can live without two of them. And you currently have a lack in both Fire and Water types, which are Fire is, arguably one of the best types offensively in the game, and Water is one of the best defensive types in the game. And then Grass, I think, is the least important of the three. That being said, you're also... you have the ground flying electric core, which is very good. You don't have a ghost type to spin block, which isn't the greatest. And you're also missing the dark psychic fighting core. You have, you have no dark type. You have no... Do you have a psychic? No, but you have Como. So maybe you can get through it that way. You have every rock setter you could possibly imagine in Gliscor, Cradilly, Hippowdon, Mega Steelix, Donphan, Como. I think Cleavor also gets Stealth Rock, Orthworm, Shuckle, and Carbink. You have actually just too many hazard setters. You have too many. So maybe consider rebalancing your team, because you can only set up Stealth Rocks once until they get defogged. So, what if your opponent just doesn't bring defog? Now you have 6 Pokemon with Stealth Rock, and none of them can put up Stealth Rock again, because it doesn't stack infinitely. Yeah, definitely along the lines of Ryevji's team, way too focused in on singular types, and definitely want to have a consideration of rebalance here. So give that about a 5 out of 10. Next team, Ibe's team. Alright, so Ibe, new to the draft, as well as Otto was. So we have Mega Scizor, Tapu Koko, Clodsire, Samurott Hisui, Moltres Grim, Jirachi, Manaphy, Glamet. Now, these Pokemon are solid. That being said, Dragon type? Where Dragon? Where Dragon? Yeah, there is no dragon there. I'm sorry to inform you all. There is no dragon. However, you do have doubled up steel types with the Jirachi and the Mega Scizor. You have Tapu Koko as an excellent fairy. You also have Grimmsnarl, which is a very good Pokemon in its own right. And you have... Well, that's basically it, really. That being said, Mega Scizor, very strong Pokemon, can do pretty much anything you want it to do as far as you can, get it in position properly, right? Clodsire, I think, is your only access to Stealth Rock. I don't know if Scizor got Stealth Rock in Gen 9. Oh wait, no, you have Jirachi. Never mind. What am I saying? That's just silly. What have I said? That's just incorrect information. So how do I feel about this team overall? Honestly, it's pretty solid. Sure, you're lacking the dragon, but you have your fire, you have your water, and you have no grass type, but that's okay. Like I said a little bit ago, grass is probably the least important of these types. You have your fairy and your steel, you have a ground type in Clodsire, you have access to a solid array of dark types, you have the dark psychic, no fighting type core. So you're missing a fighting type, which isn't exactly the greatest either. But you do have the water. You have the Manaphy, and Tailglow is legal in this league, and Z-Move Manaphy, as we saw last season, is an absolute terror. So I think Ibe will probably be okay. That being said, the speed tiers on this one looking pretty good. You have Tapu Koko at your top end, and you have 2 100s after that, which is also pretty fine. How do I feel about defog with this team? Well, you have 2 fantastic defoggers and a third also pretty good defogger with Moltres. You have, screens potential with Grimmsnarl. You have, like I said, Rocks, Jirachi. You have Volt Switch, U-Turn all over the place. And you have Ceaseless Edge, the new Pokemon, which seems like a very, very good Pokemon. I like hitting my opponent and also setting up spikes. Do I feel like this is a better draft than Plasma's? No, I would not say that it is. I do think Plasma's is a little bit more well-rounded and has more types and cores covered. So As a result, if Plasma's draft was a 7, I'd probably give this one about a 6.5. This is definitely the second best draft that we have seen so far. Next up, we have Zera's team. Okay, so we have the Iron Valiant, Corviknight, Lycanroc, all formies, by the way. Slowking Galar, Incineroar, Vikavolt, Flygon, Melodic, Roserade, and Cofagrigus. That is spelled incorrectly. Forgive my moderator Kiwi, who played in the last season. She helped me with the doc while I was at work this past week, and, you know, there are some typos. So we will have to, you know, adjust to those things. That being said, Iron Valiant, very good Pokemon. Very strong. Strong Pokemon. Corviknight, yeah, very good Corviknight. So we have Fairy Dragon, and I said that in the wrong order. Fairy Steel, and then your Dragon with Flygon. Flygon's an acceptable dragon. You also have Levitate and Ground typing there. You have Fighting, Flying, and you have an Electric type in Vikavolt. You have your Water, Grass, Fire, which is good. You have a Ghost type with Cofagrigus. Honestly, Zera's draft here is very, very solid. You have Corviknight as your defogger, which is, you know, it's Corviknight. It's probably the best defogger of all time. Let's be honest, it's Corviknight. Like, do you even need another defogger? I don't think you do. That being said, you do need to now keep your Corviknight alive. You have, you know, U-turn, well, not U-turn, teleport, U-turn. Not sure if Lycanroc gets U-turn, I don't think it does. But U-turn and Parting Shot with Incineroar as well. Volt Switch, you know, you have the ability to pivot all over the place with this team. You have good hazards coming out from, you know, Lycanroc being a good Stealth Rock setter. Roserade gives you the Toxic Spikes as well. I don't think Flygon gets Stealth Rock. I could be wrong. And you also have Webs with Vikavolt to reduce your opponent's speed, making your Iron Valiant, either Banded or Specs, an absolute menace to society. Very, very strong team. This, now, that being said, speed. How do I feel about speed? I'm not entirely sure of what Iron Valiant's base speed is. If it's above base 120, this team's insane. Otherwise, you have the Lycanroc, which is pretty solid as a speed tier. So, I mean, honestly, I might even say I like this draft a little bit more than I like Plasma's. Plasma's feels very cut and dry based on, like, the ladder. Whereas this one, I look at this and I'm like, yeah, this looks like a draft team to me. And I'm excited to see what Zera does. Zera, also new to the Pokemon League. Why am I yawning so much? Sorry. Also new to the Pokemon League. And, yeah, I'm interested to see how far Zera is able to carry this team. This definitely looks like a team, at least to me, this looks like a team that can make it deep into the playoffs, if not win the whole thing. So it will be very interesting to see what Zera decides to do. And like I said, I do actually like this draft more than I like Plasma's. I'm going to go ahead and give this draft an 8 out of 10. Very, very solid. That being said, I would love to see a second defogger. And, I mean, instead of, like, Cofagrigus, you could probably find something a little bit better. But it is nice to have a ghost type to prevent your opponent from rapid spinning on your ass. I mean, there's also the doubled up poison types between Slowking and Roserade, but I guess, you know, when Roserade's your grass type, then I guess it's acceptable, I suppose. You also have all of the cores, except for... No, you have everything there. Yeah, that's all there. That's just a good draft. That's genuinely just a good draft. Good job, Zera. Alright, next up, we have Spirit, a friend of Plasma's, and new to the league. So Spirit allegedly is quite a good player, and already very experienced with this, so let's see what Spirit was able to draft himself. So we have Mega Lopunny, Golden to Go, Screamtail, Dondozo, Mandibuzz, Baxcalibur, Blissey, Rillaboom, and Overquill. Alright, very, very strong team. Strong team. I love Megalop. I love Megalop. Golden Go is pretty solid, I think. Its speed is kind of middling, but it's okay. You have the Mega Lopunny and the Screamtail, both being very fast Pokemon. Dondozo, Mandibuzz is super bulky. You also have Blissey in the back on top of all of that. Like, I don't think any Pokemon is breaking through this defensive core by itself. This is an absurdly strong defensive core between the Screamtail, the Dozo, the Mandibuzz, and the Blissey. You also have Rillaboom there, adding grassy terrain, giving additional leftovers, recovery, and such. Golden Go, gaining so much from that Grassy Surge, because, you know, now you can't hit it with those ground-type moves. And, yeah, I mean, this is a good team. I don't really know what Overquill adds here, aside from Toxic Spikes, I guess. And I don't know if any of these Pokemon actually get Stealth Rock, except for Blissey. That being said, I think Blissey's going to be there pretty much every week with this team. Now, how do I feel about this team? It's really good. It's really good, but I don't like doubled up normal types between Blissey and Mega Lop. Other than that, I really don't have any complaints. This is a solid team. Like, okay. Like, you've got just, like, Screamtail, which is a menace and hard to kill by itself. You have Dondozo, just soaks up hit. You have Mandibuzz, also just soaks up hits and is a fantastic defogger in its own right. Actually, you know, now that I've noticed, I only see one defogger here. So I guess Mandibuzz is always a bring for Spirit, meaning, you know, if you have any way of capitalizing on the fact that there's a Mandibuzz on that team, consider looking into that. Is this team better than Zera's? No. But do I like it more than I like Plasma's? I would say so. You have a lot more reliable bulk than Plasma does. You have better speed at the top end, and like, sure, you have your FDS core, you have your lack of fire type, though. I mean, there's no fire type here. Could I be wrong? Am I wrong? No, there is no fire type here. So no fire type, but like, the defensive core is way harder to break, and honestly, you have very scary offense potential with Mega Lopunny and Goldengo, which is terrorizing Gen 9 with the move Make It Rain. Let's be honest, this Pokemon is pretty busted right now. I mean, it's not like, you know, oppressively broken, but it hits so hard. So I'm gonna probably pop this between Zera and Plasma's team at a 7.5 out of 10, and we will get on to another well-known face of the Cupid League, Mr. Titan T. So Mr. T has Lele, Rotom Wash, Volk, Iron Treads, Zard X, Sceptile, Muckalola, Chansey, and Buzzwole. So, one thing I'm thinking about when I look at this team, haha, attack goes Bert, right? We have the doubled up fire type with Volcarona and Zard X. We have an FDS core of Iron Treads, Lele, and Zard X, if you count Zard X as a dragon. And you also have, you know, your fire, water, grass, even though Sceptile I would not really count, because Sceptile is ass. You know, usually you want a fire, water, grass core. Well, here we have a fire, water, ass core. And, yeah, I don't know how I feel about that one, but you have, let's break things down and look for more important things, such as Defog. We have Rotom Wash. Good. Rotom Wash is very important. Having Defog is crucial when you're using one of the Mega Charizards, and, I'm not entirely sure if Buzzwole gets Defog, but if it does, then you have 2 Defoggers, which is good. You actually want that. You have Chansey as your Stealth Rocker. Chansey is fantastic. You also have Iron Treads, which I think gets Rapid Spin. And Spin's solid. Like, it's definitely solid. It's a good way of dealing with hazards that is not Defog, and I am not going to count Mega Charizard X as a Defogger, even though it does get it, because, let's be honest, you're gonna need to Defog before you send in your Charizard. So he's not really a Defogger. Um, Now, this team has a ton of offense. This is probably... This is also a very excessively hard-hitting team. You have the Lele with the Surge. You have Volk, which after a Quiver Dance can end games. You have Zardex with, you know, Dragon Dance access. Yikes. And then on the defensive end, you don't really have much physical defense beyond Buzzswole. Buzzswole can take hits, but, like, you don't always want to use Buzzswole as a physical wall. And then you also have the Muck and the Chansey on the special side. Honestly, these are maybe kind of redundant. Because, you know, special wall, but, like, they can bring different things to the table. You know, you have, like, your Assault Vest Muck to, you know, disrupt your opponent, and then you have your passive disruption with Chansey, and, you know, all of the things that Chansey does. Is this team great? It's pretty solid. I'd say it's an improvement over Mr. T's team from last season, but I mean, is it the best team of the draft? No. It's gonna be hard to beat those, right? That being said, I think this is about the same tier as Plasma's, maybe a little lower. So I'll give Mr. Titan T a 6.5 out of 10. Any recommendations I would make? I don't really like Makalola on this team. Sure, it's good, but, like, you have no real answers to Mold Breaker Earthquake beyond Buzzswole. Now, how often do you get Mold Breaker Earthquaked? Not very, but, like, I'm just saying. Excadrill is a Pokemon that I believe no one picked up. No, wait, Juvenile picked up Excadrill. Okay, never mind. So, you're gonna lose to Juvenile because he has Excadrill. Very cool. But yeah, it's just things to consider. You do actually want to have, like, a flying type that is not Charizard X, because, like I said, Stealth Rocks. And you want to have protection against all those good Earthquake users. So, 6.5 out of 10. Your Z Captains being Lele and Sceptile seems fine. I personally would have done Volcarona over Lele, but hey, you do you. Next up, we have Waffles, who is new to draft. Waffles has Galvantula Garchomp, Alola Ninetales, Mega Sceptile, Ditto, Meowstic, Scyther, Honchkrow, Terrakion, Exploud, and Talonflame. Certainly an unusual team. Certainly unusual. There's definitely no Steel type, is there? Alright, so you're missing the most important defensive type in the game. I don't really like that one. But you have Garchomp and Ninetales Alola, which is pretty good. Garchomp's fantastic Stealth Rocker. Ninetales Alola can do some interesting things with Freeze Dry and also Aurora Veil. It's not bad. It also has decent speed. Ninetales Alola is your fastest Pokemon, however, I think. I don't know exactly what Galvantula's speed is off my memory. I think it might be base 117. Could be wrong. Maybe that's faster than Ninetales Alola. Oh wait, Mega Sceptile. Duh. Never mind. You have fine speed. Your speed is fine. You also have Ditto. Now, I'm noticing something. You have... I'll call it two defoggers. You have Talonflame, you have Honchkrow, and you have Scyther. Now, why am I calling it two defoggers? Because both of these are a half defogger. You don't want to use either of these Pokemon for defog. And Talonflame is more acceptable because of Flame Body and Heavy Duty Boots. You have your Rock Setters. I mean, those are good. You know, Terrakion, Garchomp, fantastic. But you have a weakness to Stealth Rock, and a pretty dramatic one. Here's why. Weak to Rock, 4 times weak to Rock, and 4 times weak to Rock. So, you're going to really panic whenever your opponent puts up Stealth Rock, and you're going to need to, find a way of dealing with that. Now, how are you going to deal with that? You're probably going to want to change up your team. You have two Pokemon that are 4X, weak to Rock, and you have multiple Bug types, and multiple Flying types, and while I'm at it, multiple normal types. And you don't really want to double up on stuff like that. You're also, yeah, you're also missing a water type. I might consider picking one of those up as well. So maybe like an Empoleon, if Empoleon's still available, could do very well for your team. Empoleon is a defogger, it resists rock, and it's a water type. It gets everything that I'm suggesting that you get. So, consider that. How do I feel about Waffles' team? Is it the worst one so far? No. Do I think it's a little bit better than Otto's or ReFG's? I can't really say that it is. I can't say that it's worse, though, so I will go ahead and put it in the 5-point tier as well. Alright, and that concludes the first row. Next up, we've got the second row. Starting off with Dead King, who also new to the draft. We have Mega Gardevoir, round 2 pick Ninjask, Crocodile, Exeggutor, Alola, Empoleon. Empoleon is not available. Very unfortunate. Politoed, Tapu Bulu, Azumarill, Seismitoad, Barraskewda, Cramorant, and Ludicolo. So Dead King here has hard committed to Rain. Basically, Dead King's first couple of picks happened, and then Dead King picked Empoleon, and then picked Politoed, and was like, Rain Pokemon, Rain Pokemon, Rain Pokemon, Rain Pokemon, Rain Pokemon. Now, here's the problem. There's this move that exists in Pokemon called Freeze Dry, which is something that you always want to check for when you are building your team. And this team has a dramatic problem with this move. Let me explain. Weak to Freeze Dry, weak to Freeze Dry, times 4 weak to Freeze Dry, neutral Freeze Dry. Weak to Freeze Dry, 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 times 4 weak to Freeze Dry. Weak to Freeze Dry, times 4 weak to Freeze Dry, and times 4 weak to the move Freeze Dry. Now, when you're building Rain, you really want to have a Steel type. Not a Water Steel type, like Empoleon, but you want to have just a Steel type. A Steel type. Just a normal Steel type. Why do you want this, you may ask? Because Steel is very well complemented by Rain. It gives you additional protection against fire types. While it may add a little bit of weakness to water, who cares? You're getting rid of your main weakness of fire. Now, that being said, you can remedy your weakness to water by having a water steel type named Empoleon. But you also, when you do that, you add a layer of being weak to freeze dry. And yeah. So what I would do if I were Dead King is I'd drop this Empoleon immediately and pick up a different steel type. I'd also probably not keep Cramorant or Ludicolo. That being said, you know, Dead King's new, we can't really expect too much. But when you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 water types out of 12 Pokemon, you really need to work on that. Is this draft the worst one so far? I'm sorry to say, but yes. While I do love Mega Gardevoir Crocodile, your Dragon type is an Alolan Exeggutor. You round 2 picked Ninjask in a league without Baton Pass. And you have 7 water types. So, you know, sure, Crocodile can get in there, get up rocks, very cool. And then what? You just lose? Like, if your opponent has, say, a Cradily with Storm Drain, how do you break it? You have to go into, at this point, your Mega Gardevoir. And, you know, from there, it's just like, yeah, that doesn't fix the problem. You're just getting rolled. You know? All your opponent has to do is bring a Pokemon with Sunny Day. Once Politoed goes down, you lose the battle. So really, just like, you really need to baby that Politoed as this draft is. I would recommend, And I feel like this one's a pretty straightforward recommendation. Not having 7 water types, please consider changing up your team. If I had to give this draft a score, I don't even think I would give it a 5 or a 4. I'm gonna have to give this one a 3. Yeah, it's like not only do you have 7 water types, you have Empoleon as your defogger, which, you know, I guess that's fine, right? Empoleon's fine defogger. What other defogger? What other defogger? And then, you know, let's not even talk about, you know, the 4x, the multiple Pokemon week to, you know, electric. Some of them even 4x. Like, you don't have a proper ground resist beyond Ludicolo. You have 2 immunities between Cramorant and Ninjask. I guess Exeggutor, but how often are you bringing Exeggutor, really? But I guess the Bulu with the terrain helps, so I won't get on you too much for the ground weakness, but yikes, dude. Yikes. Too many I'm gonna have to give this a 2.2 out of 10, which is 10 minus 7.8 out of 10, because too much water. Next up, we have Juvenile. Juvenile, double dragon, immediately. So after that we have Mega Diancie, which I am pretty okay with, and a Excadrill. I do like that Fairy Dragon Steel Core. That being said, Kyurem and Hydreigon is a redundancy. You don't need both. I know Juvenile's favorite Pokemon is Hydreigon, but if I had to pick one to keep between the two of them, I'd pick Kyurem because Freeze Dry is so relevant in some matchups. So yeah, consider that. Mega Diancie is a fantastic Pokemon. Zeraora, very strong as well. Weezing, Galarian, Hisuian Decidueye, and Lapras. So, we have Victini. I like Victini. Victini's solid as a fire type. We have, you know, the 2 dragons. We have ground type. We have an electric type. We have no flying type. But we have a couple of Pokemon with Levitate in Weezing, Galarian, and also Hydreigon. That being said, our ground resistance beyond that, I think, is just this. Yeah, it's just that. So, luckily for you, you have the Mold Breaker Earthquake Pokemon, so you don't have to worry about it that much. That being said, there are other Pokemon that get the ability Mold Breaker and have Earthquake. So, I would consider maybe picking up an actual flying type. Just to consider. That being said, I do like your Hazard game. You have Diancie as rocker. You also have Excadrill as rocker. Both of those. Good rockers. Diancie, there was a weird point in time where Diancie was using, like, Protect, Stealth Rock, Moonblast, Diamond Storm as its moveset. I've used that moveset. It goes crazy. So, honestly, like, I have no complaints with Diancie being one of your 2 rockers. You have good Defogger, Weezing, Galarian, and then you have kind of Defogger. And honestly, I don't know if Hisuian Decidueye also gets Defog. I don't see why it wouldn't, but I don't know, maybe they have different movesets. But I don't mind the Hazard game of this team very much at all. I think this is pretty fine. That being said, I don't really like the double dragons. And I don't like your matchup. Actually, no. I don't really have anything too major to complain about. Yeah, I mean, you don't have a water type. What? I mean, sure. Cupid, Lapras is right there. Who cares? Lapras is terrible. We don't count that shit. At least I don't. But that being said, you know, beyond that, pretty solid. You know, you have all of the major cores mostly filled out, except for, you know, the fighting Dark Psychic, which you have a Dark type and a Psychic type, but you do not have a fight. Oh, wait! Is Disu... No, Hisui and Decidueye is grass fighting, right? If it is grass fighting, never mind. Ignore me. This is, you know, this is fine. But if it's not, maybe consider picking up a fighting type. Yeah. So for those of you who have not caught on by now, I haven't really looked too much into the newer generation stuff. I just haven't really had time. So, I don't have all of this memorized yet. Please bear with me while I do memorize it, though. That being said, Juvenile, this is probably your best ever draft. Especially compared to last season when you drafted 7 ice types, which was stupid. So, no wait, it was only 6. It was only 6. That being said, is this draft S+ tier material? I wouldn't say so. Your speed, you have Zeraora. Fantastic. You have a lot of Pokemon at high speeds, but there's this slight problem where your team's too fast, and you can have your opponent bring Trick Room against you, and you can easily get rolled by it. So you gotta be careful of that. Your defense is, I mean, it's very offensive, this team, obviously. You really only have Weezing as a designated bulky Pokemon, so a lot of your matches are going to rely on you keeping the momentum, as they say. I'll give this draft about a 6.8 out of 10. I don't think it's as good as Plasma's, but I do think it is still a very solid draft in its own right, and I would be able to pilot this into the playoffs myself. That being said, you're not me, so we will see. Also, Juvenile, if you click Thunder Wave on Zeraora, there's no helping you at that point. Next team, Timba. Timba got help from Crystal Wolf this draft, which is why Timba's team looks pretty similar to how Crystal Wolf's team looked back in Season 1, with the Tornadus T and the Tapu Fini. And I think the Nidoqueen was also there, I could be wrong. How do I feel about this draft? What's a dragon type? What is a dragon type? What the fuck is a dragon type? You know, there is no dragon type here, as you can see. There is no dragon. I do not like that. I really think dragon is a super important type to have. I will always draft a dragon, unless I am memeing. And even when I am memeing, I still try to, you know, find a dragon that fills whatever meme niche I am going for. Like last season, when I picked all the fuckable Pokemon, I picked Goodra, because it is in the top 20 of Pokemon that get looted by people. Consider that. Now, beyond that, we have good Fire, Water, Grass core with Fini, Heatran, and Tangrowth. We've got no Ghost type, which is fine. We have Ground, Electric, and Flying with Tornadus. And we have Dark, Psychic, and also Fighting with Mega Metacham and Weavile. So, you know, the lack of a dragon kinda could bite you just a little bit, but everything else is fine. You have Heatran as your designated Stealth Rocks user. You're going to use him most of the time, but Nidoqueen also is completely acceptable with rocks, as we have seen before many, many times. Defog, you have Tornti and Fini, both of which are fantastic defoggers. You know, very solid between the two. You have great offense, you have good momentum control with Fini, you have the Tornadus as well. Tangrowth is a decent Pokemon, you got Volt Switch Raikou. Honestly, pretty good draft, pretty good. How do I feel about it overall? I mean, I don't hate it. The lack of a dragon sucks, though. Like, it's really bad. I feel like it's gonna become so relevant. Like, where are you gonna find that Pokemon that just has all that coverage after Medicham dies? Because let's be honest, Medicham does everything you need it to offensively. I don't know. It's hard to say. Your speed tiers are good. I do like the nice little speed slope that you have here. That being said, you have too much at the top end, and I would like to see something slower than Tangrowth to stop you from getting completely rolled by Trick Room. But beyond that, I don't know. There's not really much to complain about here. I'll probably give this one also about a 7. I think this is a valid assessment of this one. Yeah, 7. I'll go 7. Alright. Next up. Yikes. Where do you even start? Where do you even start? We have My Fate's team. 34 points left over at the end of the draft. We have Mismagius Gengar, Onix, Dusknoir, Mega Sableye, Banette, Frostlass, Chandelure, Aegislash, Gardevoir. So, you know how I typically say don't draft too many of the same type? There are 8 ghost types on this team. Not only are there 8 ghost types on this team, for backup, they have Onix and Gardevoir. How do I even get objective with this? How do I even look at this team objectively? Like, you have no Defogger, your Stealth Rock setter is Onix. Like, you lose to Stealth Rocks, and you have no Defogger. You have Mega Sableye for Magic Bounce. That's your only form of hazard prevention. You have Aegislash, I guess. I think that got Stealth Rock recently. I could be wrong. You have only Aegislash, I'm not counting Banette, to provide any sort of physical offense. Banette sucks, so we don't count him for anything. You have Dusknoir, I guess. Sure, Dusknoir. You have no defense beyond this. You have Dusknoir, you have Eviolite, Onix, and you have Aegislash. That is your defense. And you also Mega Sableye, but like, you know, you kind of need your Mega Sableye to do literally everything for your whole team right now. You know, it is your only way of not getting completely rolled on the spot by literally every single matchup. You want to know how I would fix this team? You have 5 free agent moves. With these free agent moves, you should drop every Pokemon on this team except for maybe Mega Sableye and Aegislash, and pick up different Pokemon with them. You should pick up literally every type you should have. But My Fate is insistent on a quote-unquote Ghost Gang, so if I am just going to be real, this is the worst draft. There's no argument. It's the worst. He didn't even use all 130 of the points he was given. He used 96. And yeah, there's just, there's no fixing it. There's no fixing this. Next up, we got Rudes' team. Rudes' team has a lot of potential. A lot of potential. We have Dragapult, Great Tusk, Mega Maw, Zapdos. Pex is there. Garg, Serp, Altaria, Golem, and Voltorb. Now here's the problem. You committed way too early to all of these good Pokemon, and sure, while you have managed to get yourself 7 good Pokemon, you also have 3 Pokemon that will basically never come up. When will you ever bring Altaria when you have a Dragapult on your team and a Zapdos on your team? When will you ever bring Golem when you have Great Tusk to set up your Stealth Rocks? And a Zapdos for Volt Switch? Voltorb. Do I even need to explain it? So, we are going to simply ignore these 3 Pokemon at the bottom here, and we will assess the top 4. So, we have Dragon, we have Fairy, and also Steel. We have our ground type. We have a fighting type there as well. We have an electric type. We have a flying type. I like it. I like it. All of it looks very, very good. We have no fire type, which is pretty bad. Fire type, like I said, I think is probably the most important out of the fire, water, grass core. And grass is the least important. That being said, we have a grass type and a water type, but no fire. In fact, I don't even think we really have reliable fire coverage beyond Dragonbolt Fire Blast, which does not feel very good. I think Mega Mawile might get Fire Punch. That being said, there are no Fire Weak teams in the league, at least that I pointed out. And, you know, as a result, you know, you don't really need that fire coverage as much. You have good hazard game, with Great Tusk Mega Maw both being fantastic rock setters. You have Toxapex to do everything. You have Garg as well. Serperior and Zapdos are both defoggers, which are very, very fantastic. So, honestly, looks solid. I have no real complaints beyond the lack of a fire type. That being said, this team, quick. You have good speed tier coverage all the way through. You know, your top end speed being Dragapult, meaning you're basically going to always be faster. And then at the bottom end, you have things like Toxapex and Garg to prevent you from getting Trick Roomed and absolutely destroyed. Yeah, honestly, it's solid. I mean, as much as I like to try and find literally every little thing that could be complained about, I just don't think there's much to complain about here. I guess the lack of special attack, I suppose, could be brought up, but even then, like, Serp with Contrary after a Leaf Storm is a huge special sweeper, and Zapdos has base 125 special attack, which means it already hits pretty hard. So really, like, not much to say is bad about this. So the lack of a fire type, tragically, is going to knock you down a couple of points, though. I don't know, you've got a lot of good instant offense, and, you know, you're probably the craziest physical attacking Pokemon in the entire draft on your team in Mega Mawile. So, yeah, I mean, offensively you're good, defensively you have Toxapex, Zapdos, Garg, and Great Tusk can be pretty hard to kill itself, so yeah, it looks good. Looks good to me, honestly. This is a playoff team. This is a playoff team. I'm gonna go ahead and give this one a 7 out of 10 as well. I think 7 out of 10 is a very good number for it. It doesn't do anything that stands out to me, though, which is why it's only at 7 instead of something like an 8. You know, it doesn't really reach out and grab me and make me think, wow, this guy is going places. You know? That being said, for a first draft, I don't know if Roots has done a draft before, but if this is your first draft, this is an amazing first draft. Absolutely fantastic. Alright, next up, we have the butt of the joke. The bottom of the joke, if you will. Bento. Bento has decided to draft Mega Aggron again. Big surprise. Alright, so Bento's team. Sneasler, Dragonite, Infernape, Mega Aggron, Florges Pelipper, Alakazam, Lokix, Raichu, Alola. So, how do I feel about this? I feel like double fighting type. That's how I feel. Now, Sneasler is good, Infernape is also good, but do you need both? No, I think they're both redundant, and considering you're using Pelipper, Rain to support your Aggron, you probably don't actually want an Infernape on your team at all. This Infernape probably hurts you more than it helps. You also have, you know, solid FDS core, Dragonite, Mega Aggron, Florges, very, very strong, very bulky. The Florges supports the Mega Aggron well with Wish support, as well as the Pelipper being there to cover the weaknesses of both. Honestly, I like that defensive core very, very much. Low kicks is solid. You have good top speed with Alakazam, but like I said, you don't need this Infernape here. He doesn't add anything to the team. So I would probably swap out the Infernape for something else. Raichu is fine. It gives you extra Volt Switch. We have Volt Switch, U-Turn, 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 but you probably don't want to keep this guy. So yeah, it looks solid. I mean, this is more what a rain draft should look like. I want to point this out. This is more what a rain draft should look like. Why? Because you don't rely entirely on the rain. That being said, having the rain is nice and it supports a couple of your Pokemon, but you don't auto lose when your opponent gets rid of your rain. And that's good. That's good. This is a great improvement for Bento's drafting. This is a great improvement. Now, time to point out the things that Bento has missed. The things that Bento has missed are Grass type. Grass type is actually kind of useful, especially in rain. Why is it useful in rain, you may ask? Well, so grass types are weak to fire. Having a grass type in the rain gives an additional resistance to fire. It'll become neutral damage. And on top of that, grass types aren't, hurt by the rain because, they don't, like, the rain doesn't improve water types matchup against them. It just turns it into, like, neutral damage. In the end, the grass type still wins the matchup because the grass hits water for super effective, even in the rain. Big surprise, right? So I would probably swap out this Infernape for a grass type. And, beyond that, we have, fighting, dark, psychic core, very good. A nice water ghost, not a water ghost, a grass ghost could be pretty solid here. I wonder if there are any good grass ghost types that Bento could maybe pick up in the spot of this Infernape, because that would be probably everything that his team needs. So Bento is essentially, if he does go and follow through and get rid of the Infernape, his only rocker at that point is Mega Aggron, which you don't really want. And your defoggers are Dragonite, who doesn't want to be a defogger, and Pelipper, who will basically always be a defogger. Now the question is will your Pelipper be Damp Rock, Boots, or some other variety of Pelipper? These are all questions you need to consider when you're building your team. And yeah, I mean, I don't think Florges gets defog. I don't remember if it does or not. I've used it in draft before. I don't remember. I think it might. So if it does, very cool. Good control of the hazards, but you don't really have a rock setter that isn't named Mega Aggron. And I know how Bento likes to play Mega Aggron, and Stealth Rocks is not something that will be there. So, I would probably consider trying to look into a different rocks setter than Infernape, especially when you're doubled up on fighting types. And again, a fire type in the rain. Don't really want that. So tragically, since Bento is shooting his own foot with the Infernape, I'm gonna have to give this draft about a we'll give a 6. Just a 6. Just a regular 6. I think 6 is a good number. Definitely do something about this Infernape. Right there, it's a 13-point waste on your team, and you really should do something about that. You also don't really have anything beyond the rain to benefit your Raichu. Like, you don't get the access to Surge Surfer. So at this point, this is just a 9-point regular Raichu, which isn't very good. So, yeah. Can't really recommend that one. I'd probably drop these two and see if you can pick up 22 points of something more useful. Next up, we have Antkiller. Antkiller, staple top 3 performer in the Cupid League. We have Greninja Glastrier, Silvally, Ferrothorn, Hatterene, Porygon 2, Noivern, Cinderace, and Nidoking. So, I don't really know how I feel about this. It looks good. It looks good. And I had a thought as I was reading off the team. I was like, something's redundant here, but I didn't. I guess it just wasn't important enough to me to where I can bring it up now. So, we have, you know, potential Trick Room option with Ferrothorn, Hatterene, Glastrier. Very, very cool. Porygon also being a setter helps with that a lot. And you have good top speed with Greninja, Cinderace, Noivern. You don't have much reliable speed in the middle tiers. Like, you don't have a base 70 speed Pokemon. You have Nidoking at, I think, 85. And you have Silvally at 95. So you've got some interesting gaps in your speed tiers. Like, sure, you're either going to be faster than your opponent, or you're going to be slower than your opponent, and it's up to your opponent to find out which. Or you leave these gaps here that you currently have, which lets your opponent do things like, oh, well, I'm not going to outslow, I don't know, example Pokemon. I'm not going to be slower than Porygon 2 in Trick Room, but I will never be faster than Nidoking, so I might as well just slap a Choice Band and max attack and max HP on this Pokemon. And that can result in your opponent getting some, you know, pretty nasty stuff off on you as a result of, you know, just being out-prepared and in prep. That being said, with the skill level of this league, it probably won't come up that much. But it can still come up, and that's definitely something you want to consider. I'm seeing a very, very notable weakness to fighting. Beyond Hatterene, your fighting resistance is Silvally, which will always be Ghost type, which is not very good. You know, you can't come in on fighting types with any of these Pokemon, except for the Hatterene. And even then, Hatterene folds very easily to getting knocked off on the switch into literally just switch into a Steel type, and then Hatterene is walled. So you got to be careful of that. Your Defogger, you have Noivern, which I don't like as a Defogger. I don't like fast, fragile Defoggers like Noivern is. And you have Silvally, which is a lot more acceptable. That being said, Silvally, it's kind of like the Swiss Army knife Pokemon, you know? It does everything, but it doesn't... It's a jack of all trades Pokemon. That's a better explanation. It can do everything, but it doesn't do everything super well. Kind of like Mew, which surprisingly went undrafted, but, you know, I'm not in the league, so. I like the offensive power. I like Nidoking. I like Glastrier. I like Cinderace with Libero. And I like your hazard game with the Defoggers, Court Change, Magic Bounce. That's very, very good. All of that is solid. What of your Pokemon beyond Ferrothorn put up Stealth Rock, though? Nidoking? Sure, Nidoking is a decent offensive Stealth Rocker, but it's kind of slow and fragile enough to where sometimes you'll just go into Nidoking and it'll die before you get up your rocks. So you gotta be careful of that. That being said, Ferrothorn is Ferrothorn, and it will always be Ferrothorn, and Ferrothorn will never stop being Ferrothorn. And if you don't know what that means, this Pokemon, since Generation 5, has been in the OU tier of every format because of its ability to just put up hazards, and Leech Seed, and Thunder Wave, and Knock Off, and Stealth Rock, and just sit there and whittle you down with Iron Barbs. It can do leftovers or Rocky Helmet, so when you hit it with a physical attack, you lose a third of your health, and yeah, it's very cringe. But it's Ferrothorn, so hey, it's back. What are you gonna do about it? Probably nothing. Now your fire resistances. What fire resistance? Cinderace? You call that a fire resistance? Nah. Greninja? No. You see, these two Pokemon are too fragile to be considered fire resistances. And Noivern, I would argue, is also in the same boat. So you have to worry about fire types. So your Silvally now is going to probably be water. And you don't want to double up on your water types, right? Especially in a battle. Greninja is very interesting. This is Greninja with access to Protean and Battle Bond, now that Battle Bond has been nerfed dramatically. So You know, I think it's fair at 20 points in this league. Um, and yeah, honestly, I mean, yeah, I don't know. There's some pretty exploitable stuff with this team, and it'll be up to your opponents to find out because I don't want to just give away all of the answers, but I did give a couple examples of what you can expect. How do I feel about this team? Um, I'll give it about a 6.5. I think it's a little bit better than Bento's. If I gave Bento's a 6, then yeah, this would be a 6.5. Um, so I think it's a little bit better than Bento's. I do not think it's as good as a team like Plasma's or, you know, anyone else's that I put in the 7 tier. Like I said, you've got too many glaring holes in your speed tiers, and, you know, your designated bulky Pokemon is Ferrothorn. And then beyond that, everything else can be kind of exploited. I guess Glastrier is, you know, hard to kill with a move that doesn't resist, but it's pure Ice type. Ice type is a bad type, so, you know, you can't really call Glastrier a bulky Pokemon. And obviously you're going to have to be careful with the hazards and, you know, your opponent dealing with yours. And finally, we have our last new player, Faye. So, Faye, new to the draft, joined late. He wanted to join in Season 2, because I tried to get him in, and then he didn't. And then Timba and Calric, who are friends with him, both played in Season 2, and they had a lot of fun, and he regretted it. So now he joined this one, albeit a little late. I did DM him to ask him if he wanted to join, and apparently there was a mistake, and he thought I was talking about something else. So, as a result, the first 4 picks are technically late picks. He used those picks to get caught up, and after that, it's all just a normal draft. So here we have Iron Hands, Gyarados, Arcanine, Hisui, Sylveon, Meowscarada, Mega Manectric, Bronzong, Gudra Hisui, and Whimsicott. Now, things I would like to point out. You're doubled up on the electric types. You have Iron Hands and Mega Manectric. Now, I don't know exactly what Iron Hands does, but I do know that Mega Manectric is a fine Pokemon in and of its own right, and I think that Iron Hands is probably not entirely necessary, especially when you already have such solid physical offense. You also have the doubled up Steel types with Gudra Hisui and Bronzong, but that's fine. I mean, like I said, Steel's a great type, and I have no complaints about having more than one Steel type. Until you hit more than 2 Steel types, in which case, now I have a complaint. You have your Fairy Dragon Steel. That's pretty good. You have Water, Grass, and you have a Fire type in Arcanine, Hisui. You have hazards coming out of the Arcanine, but you do not appear to have a Pokemon with Defog. Now, here's the problem. This is singles, and in singles, the move Stealth Rock is extremely, extremely good. Because singles is a very positional game. You do a lot of switching, you know, in order to try and gain the upper hand. And having something up like Stealth Rock is always good, because it gets you extra mileage the more your opponent is forced to switch. So not having a Defogger is extremely bad, especially when you have, I mean, sure, it's only 2, but they're 2 of your best offensive threats in Gyarados and Arcanine Hisui. Being weak to Rock, Stealth Rock is going to be a problem. Now, you can remedy this by putting a pair of shoes on both of them, but, like, that makes you weaker to knockoff, and you gotta be careful of that, too. That being said, I'm noticing that there are also 2 fairies here, between the Whimsicott and the Sylveon. And, I mean, you have in your cores, you just don't have a ghost type. Actually, do you have one in your cores? No, wait, you're missing a ground type? Ooh, the lack of a ground type hurts a lot. Ground is arguably the most important type in draft. Earthquake is such a relevant move that I use it as an example against pretty much every draft. And the lack of having a ground type could hurt you pretty dramatically. Not only that, ground is fantastic to have with the prevalence of the move Volt Switch. Being an immunity to Volt Switch, meaning your opponent is now stuck there with you, is always very, very good. I'd probably look into dropping this Whimsicott because you already have a grass and also a fairy, and pick up a ground type for the 9 points that you have here. You also probably don't want Bronzong and Goodra. Probably don't want both of those. You probably want one or the other. And if I had to pick between the two, which I would keep, I would probably keep the Bronzong. Goodra is an 18-point Pokemon, and you can definitely find something better, I would say, for that amount of points. That being said, you would still need to pick up another dragon, but there are Pokemon that are available, like Salamence and such, which technically are also defoggers and are dragons that can provide you offense. That being said, Goodra is very, very bulky, so Goodra is also acceptable here, and you can just switch it the other way around and get rid of Bronzong to pick up something else. Yeah, other than that, though, the draft is solid. This is probably a 6.5 draft, I would say. I can't put it up there with the 7s because, you know, the redundancies and types down here. And also, you know, I think only one Stealth Rock. No, wait, Bronzong. So the Stealth Rock and the offensive Pokemon Arcanine, he's sweet to give you Stealth Rock. And the lack of Defogger knocks you down in basically an entire point. So, yeah, I'm gonna give this I'll give it a 5.8. You definitely need a Defogger. That is something you need to have done, like, immediately. So definitely get yourself a Defogger, and then you'll be good to go. So, that is all 16 drafts covered. I hope you guys enjoyed the Cupid League Season 3 Draft League recap. Yeah, I'm excited to see how the season goes and how all of the matches unfold. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I will see you for the next whatever I do. Later.